Okay, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Insight. This is Quirk Healthcare Solutions webinar series. Today, David Cooling is going to talk about the newly announced Meaningful Use Final Rule for 2015. David's a regulatory expert at Quirk and is highly knowledgeable in matters of healthcare policy and procedures. I'm going to be muting everybody during the presentation, and I promise I'll unmute everybody for the Q&A at the end. All right, let's get started.
Great. Thanks, Jan. Can everyone hear me okay? I guess some folks are muted, probably not. But let me share my screen. And Jan, if there's a problem with seeing anything, let me know. But I just want to say thanks for the introduction, and thank you everyone for attending this webinar. Obviously, as folks are aware, CMS released its final meaningful use rule just last week on April 6th, and there's a lot of information in it. Not much has changed from the proposed rule that was released earlier this year, but still it's good to know what's in it, what's been finalized, and we'll go over the modified meaningful use stage 2, as well as a few other items to deal with meaningful use stage 3, and then moving forward past use into what CMS wants to do with the incentive programs moving forward. So first, as you can see, in earlier this year, the meaningful use proposed rule changes were announced, and ultimately there were the final rule was announced last week on the 6th. Just for folks who don't may have a very basic understanding from meaningful use is use a certified electronic health record technology to improve quality, safety, efficiency, and reduce health disparities, engage patients and family, improve care coordination, population public health, and maintain privacy. So when you're looking at these objectives and measures, know that CMS is implementing these and is requesting eligible professionals to do so through this prism. So although a lot of folks feel that some of these are ungrounded or not pertinent to their practice, this is how CMS views meaningful use and what they use as their guidepost in formulating these rules. Meaningful use eligibility, here's a list here, mainly DOs, MDs, dentists, podiatrists, etc. Just a little background, there are meaningful use stage 1 versus meaningful use stage 2. For stage 1, there's 13 core, then choose 5 out of 10 menu for a total of 18 objectives. And for initially for meaningful use stage 2, that was intended to be 17 core. You would choose 3 out of 6 menu objectives for a total of 20. Well, that's completely changed. As you'll see as we move through this presentation. There are no more incentives, monetary incentives, for participating in meaningful use. 2015 is the first year where there'll be penalties for not participating in meaningful use, and CMS uses a look back of 2 years prior to assess those penalties. So depending on your performance year of 2015 will determine the if you are eligible for a payment adjustment for 2017 of 2%. And this increases annually 1% up to a 5% payment adjustment if you are not satisfactorily attesting for meaningful use. Meaningful use timeline, I find this chart very helpful. Obviously, with all the changes, a lot of folks are concerned, am I attesting for meaningful use stage 1, year 1, stage 1, year 2, stage 2, modified meaningful use stage 2. So what CMS has stated in their final rule is that every eligible professional will be attesting for modified meaningful use stage 2. If you have attested before, or actually, let me rephrase that. If this is the first year you will be attesting, you'll still be attesting for modified stage 2, but you'll have a number of exceptions that correlate with what you would have attested for stage 1. So how CMS is looking at this, all eligible professionals will be attesting for modified meaningful use stage 2. Those attesting for the first year in 2015 will have a number of exceptions, which we'll go through in this presentation. Moving forward, if you'll be attesting for your first year next year, you'll be attesting for modified meaningful use stage 2. And then in 2017, there'll be modified meaningful use stage 2, or you can have start early and attest for meaningful use stage 3, and in 2018 is when all eligible professionals will have to attest for stage 3. Some of the changes, top line changes with meaningful use for this modified rule is what didn't change are your clinical quality measures. So you still have to choose 9 clinical quality measures across 3 domains. So the only thing that's really changed are the objectives. So leaving your CQMs aside, the next change is the reporting period. And a lot of folks could see this coming with the proposed rule is that instead of a 1-year reporting period for 2015, this has been shortened to 90 consecutive days in the calendar year of 2015. So you can choose any 90 consecutive days from 2015 to report on your meaningful use stage 2 reporting. Finally, the core and menu framework is no longer. So instead of 17 core objectives and 3 out of 6 menu items, there are 10 objectives, 9 of those related to the core objectives, and 1 public health objective that includes 2 measures that must be fulfilled within it. So what are the objectives that have dropped off? And CMS has clearly stated that eligible professionals no longer have to attest for these objectives, but CMS also stated that in no reason are they endorsing not having your practice follow through with these objectives or fulfilling the objectives. CMS mainly is not requesting the attestation of these objectives because either they have topped off, most practices are at 90% or closer to 100%, so it doesn't make sense for CMS to track these anymore, or they've been extremely difficult, primarily around the patient engagement objectives, and we'll get into that a little bit more detail because some of the thresholds have been lowered. So attestation is no longer needed for demographics, vital signs, smoking status, clinical summaries, structured lab results, the patient list, the patient reminders, measures 1 and 3 of the summary of care, but not measure 2. We'll get into that a little more. And then the menu objectives, electronic notes, imaging results, and family health history. So these are no longer required to attest successfully through meaningful use. And again, that's not stating that CMS no longer wants you to take the demographics or the vital signs of your patients. It's just no longer appropriate for to be attested for. Some of these objectives are the same information is captured and used for your clinical quality measures, particularly smoking status. So you still, obviously, if you want to fulfill that, use that as one of your quality measures, you'd still be taking information regarding smoking and tobacco usage to do that. So just be wary that just because you may not attesting for objectives anymore, some of this information is still used in your clinical quality measures. So what does that leave left? Well, first is protecting your PHI, your patient health information. And so this revolves around security risk analysis. And a lot of folks believe your EHR vendor, just by naturally having an EHR system, fulfills this objective when it really does not. It's critical that you review the security and do a risk analysis around the patient health information in order to fulfill this objective. This is a self-attestation objective, and there's a number of vendors out there, including probably your EHR vendor, and also security risk analysis who can do this for you. But you have to do a pretty robust security risk analysis your first year, and then every year during the reporting period, do an update of that risk analysis. A risk analysis would entail making sure that credentialed users are changing their password on a frequent basis, that there's some type of notification when there has been a PHI breach, and just a number of other issues that would come up in a risk analysis. And more information can be found on CMS's website and also ONC's. But mainly this is a HIPAA issue, and this is something that's extremely important because when you're trying to fulfill your clinical quality measures and the objectives, this is one that often falls through the cracks. So I can't stress highly enough to review your existing security infrastructure in your practice, identify potential threats, prioritize them, and create an action plan. And a number of vendors are available to do this, but you do not need a vendor to do that. There's a lot of tools online that you could use to walk through it. Next is clinical decision support. These remain the same. So you'll have to choose 5 clinical decision support interventions related to 4 or more clinical quality measures. You also have to make sure that the eligible professional has enabled and implemented the functionality for drug and drug allergy interaction checks for the entire EHR reporting period. And there is one exception for those attesting for the first year, is that you only have to implement 1 clinical decision support, but we'll get into more detail over that later. So that's changed. That has stayed the same. Next, computerized provider order entry, which always used to be objective 1, is now objective 3. This is stayed the same as well. The same, making sure that 60% of medication orders done by the eligible professional during the reporting period are recorded, 30% of your lab orders, and also 30% of your radiology orders. These thresholds are reduced for those testing for the first time, but they have stayed the same initially from stage 2. The objective 4, electronic e-prescribing. More than 50% of permissible prescriptions written by the EP are queried for a drug formulary and transmitted electronically. A little lower threshold for those attesting for the first time. The objective 5, the health information exchange. This is when EP transitions or refers a patient to another setting or care. The provider of care must use certified electronic health record technology to create a summary of care record. This must be done at least 10% of the time for these transitions. Obviously, for those attesting for the first time, you can may claim an exclusion for this. For objective 6, patient-specific education, more than 10% of the time, patient-specific education resources should be identified by the EHR and provided to the patient. Objective 7, medication reconciliation, stays the same for more than 50% of the transitions for cares, just making sure that providers are reconciling medication. The objective 8, that stayed for the modified meaningful use, more than 50% of all unique patients seen by the EP during the reporting period have access to view online or transmit to a third party. And then the second piece of the patient electronic access requires at least 1 patient seen by the EP actually viewing or downloading or transmitting their data to a third party. So we'll get into this a little further, but this is a significant reduction in the threshold here. Finally, secure messaging must be the capability turned on for patients to send and receive a secure electronic message must be turned on. And finally, objective 10 is some public health reporting. Now, this is another objective that folks should probably get on right away, is to pick 2 of these 3 measures. First is IMM, is immunization registry reporting. You have 3 options here. Second is syndromic surveillance reporting. And then finally, some type of specialized registry reporting, which can include some type of cancer registry. You could take exceptions across the board if none of these measures apply to your practice. Well, I would say with a very strong caveat that there are a lot of registries out there that you may not believe would accept data from your practice or your providers that actually do. So I would strongly encourage folks to seek out their specialty societies, the registries that they may have set up, or they will certainly have information about registries that you can reach out to, your state public health agencies, to see if any of those registries are appropriate for the information that you're capturing in your office visits, et cetera. And then finally, for the specialized registry reporting, this can be used 2 times. So it's going to be very challenging to accept out of all these public health registry reporting measures. So similar to protecting PHI and doing a security risk analysis, this is a self-attestation measure. So be sure to keep all letters and correspondence you have with the representatives from these registries. So if in the instance of a meaningful use audit, that you'll have this information to support the contention that you either do not, you cannot fulfill this objective, or you have fulfilled this objective and you're currently submitting or transferring data to these registries. So to recap, the 17, from 20 objectives, we're down to 10 objectives that eligible professionals have to attest for. Now, of those objectives, as I noted, are a couple of changes. First, the patient electronic access, instead of a 5% threshold for patients actually accessing, viewing, downloading, or transmitting their PHI, this measure just now requires only 1 patient seen by the EP during the EHR reporting period to view, download, or transmit to a third party. So this is a significant reduction in the patient, one of the patient engagement objectives. Second, the EP secure electronic messaging. Instead of 5% of patients EP has either sending or receiving electronic messaging, the EP only has to note whether the electronic messaging was fully enabled during the EHR reporting period. So if this is your first year attesting for modified meaningful use stage 2, just how folks should talk about it is you're still attesting for modified meaningful use stage 2, but you are requesting exceptions due to this being your first year of attestation. So as noted previously, for the clinical decision support objective, you only have to attest that you have 1 rule. For computerized point of entry, you have lower thresholds. For e-prescribing, you also have lower thresholds. For HIE, you can claim an exclusion from that objective, and same for patient education and medication reconciliation. For patient electronic access, you can also claim an exclusion, as well as for secure messaging. And finally, for public health reporting, you will only need to report for 1 of those registries, as long as you're transmitting data through 1 of those registries for the public health reporting, you'll be in compliance with meaningful use stage 2. One thing I want to note moving forward is where I know obviously with the deadline coming up at the end of the year, and I assume most folks are probably looking at these final 90 days of 2015 as their reporting period. Just want folks to be aware what is on the horizon for 2015 2016, 2017, and then entering 2018 for meaningful use stage 3. And as you can see, the thresholds do increase. So for e-prescribing, it's 50% for 2015 through 2017. But for stage 3, it moves up to 60%. For a computerized point of entry, for your medication, labs, and radiology, that's what those 3 numbers are. They go up to 60, 30, 30, up to at least 60% across the board. Patient engagement objectives also increase dramatically between 2017 and 2018. So from 50% from 2015 to 2017, 80% of your patients have to have access to their PHI and be able to view, download, or transmit that. And then by 2018, 35% of your patients will need to have patient education that's specific to them. And then secure messaging also dramatically increases from this year, just having the capability to send and receive. To next year, having 1 patient send a message or receive a message, to 5% in 2017 and 25% in 2018. And then with patient actively engages with the electronic health record, so that means they're actually viewing, downloading, or transmitting this. At least 10% of your patients will have to be doing one of these activities by 2018. The health information exchange is the one that increases probably the most dramatically between 2017 and 2018, moving from 10% threshold to 60%. And this is often referred to as summary of care. And as you probably could tell, CMS is kind of shuffled the objective numbers and the names of what objectives have been called. So there will be a little confusion through this reporting period. But just remember, health information exchange, formerly most folks refer to as summary of care, meaning that providers will have to transmit summary of cares for more than 60% of their transitions by 2018. And then by 2018, folks will have to do reconciliation of medication, allergy, and a current problem list of transitions of care in which the patient is transitioned to the care of the EP. And then also some new items for stage 3. Also, EPs will have to attest in 2018 for stage 3. EPs may voluntarily elect to attest for stage 3 in 2017, and CMS has offered sort of a carrot to EPs to do this. Is you'll have a 90-day reporting period for stage 3 in 2017 instead of the full year reporting period you normally would have in 2018. One of the new measures under summary of care is as noted, 40% of transitions or referrals received and patient encounters in which the provider has never encountered the patient. The EP must incorporate into the patient's record an electronic summary of care document from a source other than the provider's EHR system. So meaning that if you're seeing a patient for the first time, at least 40% of those transitions should have some document included in that patient chart from their previous provider. For public health reporting, CMS is seeking to increase registry reporting here. So you, in addition to immunization registry reporting, syndromic surveillance, and public health registry reporting, we also have electronic case reporting and clinical data registry reporting. And then finally, one thing that has kind of flown under the radar, I haven't seen too many folks talk about, is that 5% of all unique patients seen by the eligible professional must have some type of patient-generated health data from a non-clinical setting incorporated into the EHR. A lot of discussion around this has included information from wearables, other devices, other measurements the patient may be doing outside of your provider's office that should be captured in the chart. And we'll get more, I'm sure we'll get more detail as this goes by, but just want folks to be aware that CMS really wants to make patients accountable for their care and more involved in the care. This you see the increase of patient engagement thresholds. You see the 5% of patient-generated health data, the summary of care increase. So that is what is driving these burdens that CMS is laying out. Finally, after meaningful use, what comes next? And this was the third part of the rule. Mainly it was 3 parts: the modified meaningful use stage 2, meaningful use stage 3, and then a little bit of discussion of what's next, primarily about what Congress passed in April 2015, the so-called Doc Fix Bill, also known as the Medicare Access Chip Reauthorization Act, that repealed SGR and enacted a new total merit-based incentive program, which takes into account value-based modifier, meaningful use, and another piece. So as incentive programs start to expire in 2018, for instance, meaningful use, VBM, PQRS, MIPS starts to begin in calendar year of 2019 with a performance year of no surprise 2 years before of 2017. CMS states that they're laying the groundwork for a smooth transition, but for anyone who's been involved in meaningful use or PQRS or any of the other incentive programs, I doubt it will be as smooth as anyone would want it to be looking forward. So I would ask folks to stay tuned for this and participate in discussions CMS may having, so both folks have a voice in what the incentive programs look like moving forward. But what is MIPS? It's still a little amorphous right now. What we're seeing is that Part B providers are going to be scored on a 0 to 100 scale. A lot of this comes from the value-based modifier measurements based on quality and cost. This is a lot of data that is in your QR/UR reports that you should have received a month or so ago. And right now we're in the midst of the informal review process for PQRS, where you have, I believe, until November 8th to review any payment adjustments you may have because of CMS's assessment that you did not satisfactorily report PQRS measurements. Final 25 points will be your meaningful use, how you use EHR systems, and then something new is the clinical practice improvement, which is a new category, and I don't have very many details about that. So as more details come online, we'll be sure to share those. But probably the biggest item that jumps out at me is that the cost of this is a huge swing between incentive and penalty, or as CMS refers to it, payment adjustment, is that starting in 2019, you can either have a 4% bump or a 4% cut, so that's an 8% swing, moving relatively quickly to 2020, where you can either have a 9% bump or a 9% cut, so that's an 18% swing. And the benefit, CMS states, is that it simplifies 3 programs to only 1, so you no longer have to try to coordinate your value-based modifier, PQRS, and MU, but you just stay focused on this one incentive program. And also encourages folks to join alternative payment models such as ACOs or other demonstration projects. One other thing I did not note on the actual slide is that this is continues a march by CMS to have providers peer reviewed against other providers, thus the 0 to 100 scale, and that will be much of the weight around whether someone receives a 4% bump or a 4% cut, et cetera. So very similar to what you see in your QR/UR report. So if you haven't checked that out, I encourage you to do that online through CMS's website and look at your QR/UR. You'll be able to see what you're where you are in terms of cost and the quality metrics that CMS uses, as well as your peers. Back to modified meaningful use stage 2. They have CMS has closed the attestation registration website. They will reopen it again on January 4th. So even if you did want to report 90 day attest for the 90 days from January through March of earlier this year. You still could not do that now. You would have to wait till January. You have to do a test by February 9th, 2016. CMS has already stated that if folks are having a tough time, they may extend this deadline. One other piece of interesting information was in the press release. CMS really encouraged providers to apply for hardship exceptions, which are reviewed by a case-by-case basis. Although they did note that several times in their press release announcing modified meaningful use stage 2 rule, I would strongly still encourage folks to try to meet the objectives, meet your clinical quality measures, and if you do have extremely difficult, challenging time, please note that some way if you're able to capture that in letters from registries or issues that your vendor may be your EHR vendor may be having in adopting these objectives into their system. Please take note of that, and you can apply for a hardship exception after the fact. But I would not put all my eggs in that basket, depending on CMS accepting your hardship exception if you're not trying to strive and meet these objectives and measures prior to February 29th. CMS instituted a 60-day comment period if you would like to provide feedback for their incentive programs going forward. They're not accepting feedback on the modified meaningful use stage 2 rule, so that's in stone, but a meaningful use stage 3 and MIPS and anything surrounded MACRA. We're expecting more information on future incentive programs in spring of 2016, and you can rest assured we'll be able to provide you greater detail when we do receive information on that. So I just want to say thank you for listening to my quick top-level presentation about modified meaningful use stage 2 and some of the other topics that were included in the final rule. With that, I open the floor to questions.
Okay, I'm unmuting everyone, so if somebody has a question, they can actually ask it. And also, I just want to note that this presentation is being recorded, and it will be uploaded to Quirk Healthcare Solutions YouTube channel. So you can go over it or point your colleagues to it, and it's open for questions.
David, I got a quick question. You mentioned that they're no longer going to be giving you money, incentive payments, but if you're in your 3rd year of meaningful use, I thought they were going to still honor the 5-year payment plan they originally came out with.
Great question. Great question. Yes, you're accurate. If you were already on the trajectory and you adopted meaningful use following CMS's timeline of when you can accept incentives, you still will be receiving incentives into 2016, I believe.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, if there are any other questions, my email address is clearly marked online and pretty easy to find. So please shoot me an email. More than happy to help. And I just want to say thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.